I do want to agree with that. There was a member of this committee that went on CNN and said it's time for actual weapons to be used. That is documented. It's on video, and we will not tolerate that type of language and calls for violence on this committee. I now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gill, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you so much for holding this hearing today. We've heard throughout this hearing a bit more of the same shrill calumny against President Trump and Elon Musk that we've been hearing for months now. But I am happy that a few of our colleagues did concede that we need more oversight and auditing of our foreign aid. I'd like to remind them that every time Republicans try to do that and audit where government money is going, they try to stonewall us. So I hope that they will get on board with protecting the American taxpayer. I think as it relates to foreign aid, to the extent that we do engage in foreign aid, it of course should advance American strategic geopolitical interests, our commercial interests, and of course should help ameliorate major humanitarian crises. But it ought to be rooted in realism, which is a recognition that we have strategic interests abroad that we ought to advance, and it ought to be rooted in a rational conception of the way the world actually is, and not the way some leftist secular bureaucrat at USAID believes the world should be. I think that forcing transgenderism and novel sexual fetishes on more traditional cultures does not advance American interests. It alienates the United States on the world stage. We've also seen USAID money going to oppose many of our allies abroad. Madam Chair gave a few examples, and I'll give a few more here. We've seen USAID money funding efforts to influence elections in India against Prime Minister Modi. We've seen our ally Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban accusing USAID of funding left-wing media outlets that are opposing him. We've seen USAID give $12.5 million just last year to the American Near East Refugee Agency, whose staff openly called for violence against Jews. The refugee agency also funded projects of the Unlimited Friends Association, which is a proxy organization for Hamas. This is not advancing our strategic interests abroad, and these are not promoting American values. Mr. Unger, I've got a couple questions for you. You've mentioned USAID as representing American ideas in action. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you believe that spending over $3 million for being LGBTQ in the Caribbean is a reflection of American ideas in action?
I believe that the programs that are focused on global health
just
and
yes or
food
no
security,
is fine. Yes or no will
the
suffice.
programs that in global health and food security and economic growth are absolutely in the interest
I'm talking about being LGBTQ in the Caribbean. Is that a reflection of American values? Yes or no?
I believe the programs that you're referring to are a reflection of
I'll
human
take
rights.
that as a yes. What about spending $70,000 for the production of a DEI musical in Ireland? Is that a reflection of American ideas in action? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Do you think that spending $2 million for sex changes and LGBTQ activism in Guatemala is a reflection of American values?
The information that you are using is
Yes
so
or no?
faulty that it doesn't
It's a yes or no
describe
question.
to USAID projects.
No, that is a direct description of what we're spending our tax dollars. Do you think that sex changes and LGBTQ activism in Guatemala
is
an accurate reflection of American values abroad?
Is that
it's a yes
data
or no
coming
question.
from Doge?
Is that a yes or a no?
What I want to understand
this is
the
a
data
yes or
coming
no
from
question.
Doge? Because they counted the same USAID program 3 times.
You're not going to filibuster. Reclaiming my time here. We'll go to another one. How about $1.5 million to promote job opportunities for LGBTQ individuals in Serbia? Is that a reflection of American values?
Providing job opportunities for allies around the world is absolutely in the interest of the American people.
Well, I would like to maybe challenge you if you really believe in promoting DEI, I've got about 20 seconds left, then in giving jobs to somebody based on their minority status or the color of their skin or their sexual proclivities, you might want to consider stepping down from your job and giving it to somebody who has more minority points than you do.
Well, if that were what
With that, I
DEI is
yield.
about,
My time
maybe
is
I would,
over.
but it's
I'm
not what
yielding.
it's about.
I now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Fallon, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and my colleague from Texas did a very good job. You know, listen, the sky is falling. We hear it now, and not
for
just
our
in
humanity. So with that, I say to all of you, be strong. We will fight back.
I now recognize myself for closing remarks. And threats against the President of the United States will not be tolerated by anyone. And the math does add up. The United States is $36 trillion in debt. $36 trillion. There's plenty of spreadsheets that show that. As a matter of fact, there's a debt clock. You can watch it continue to tick upwards every single day. In fiscal year 2024, the government spent over $1.8 trillion more than it took in. And in fiscal year 2025, the interest on our debt is expected to exceed $1 trillion. That's everybody. I don't care how you vote. The American people do not want to continue to fund these propaganda campaigns, regime changes, terrorist, LGBTQ initiatives, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and other Democrat globalist initiatives. And even if the people did want to continue supporting such causes, guess what? They can support them with their own money through private donations. Because the reality is, everyone, we are flat out broke. If the U.S. government operated like any other private business, which it should, by the way, it would be completely bankrupt and it would be out of business. Last year, we spent almost $2 trillion more than we took in. The United States government is not a charity, and it is not to be used and abused by the bureaucracy to implement the far left's agenda and impose it on the entire world. Again, 96% of all political contributions from USAID employees go to Democrat Party candidates or PACs. Perhaps that's why we're hearing all the complaining. The revolving door between USAID employees and NGOs that receive USAID funding is undeniable. Maybe we should consider investigating whether USAID funding has made it back to Democrat campaigns. Has it affected elections? The real questions the American people deserve to know answers to are these. Why are we funding 9 out of 10 news outlets in Ukraine? Why was former USAID Administrator Samantha Power visiting Hungary for the purpose of strengthening democratic institutions when Hungary is a country that is strongly democratic and members of the EU and NATO? Why was USAID co-funding joint programs with George Soros' Open Society to promote radical social agendas throughout the developing world? Why is USAID involved in the canceling of elections in Romania? Why is USAID involved in funding court changes in Albania that resulted in the prosecution of the Albanian opposition leader? Why is USAID funding censorship laws in Brazil to silence Bolsonaro? Why is USAID involved in funding the Syrian civil war? What we have learned here today is that USAID has been used as a tool by Democrats to brainwash the world with globalist propaganda to force regime changes around the world. But if USAID funded terrorism that resulted in the death of Americans, then this committee will be making criminal referrals. Lastly, if this is the funding that has come from the USAID, the United States Agency for International Development needs to be abolished. With that and without objection, all members have 5 legislative days within which to submit materials and additional written questions for the witnesses, which will be forwarded to the witnesses. If there is no further business without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.